Thanks everyone for joining us for the 15th edition of the Virtual Throws Conference. We're excited to have Ryan Crouser with us tonight, pick his brain, talk about his recent throwing and how he's been training. Before we get to that, thank you to Rob. Thank you to our sponsors, MF Athletic and the National Throws Coaches Association. I don't really feel like I need to introduce Ryan. I feel like everybody pretty much knows who he is, but if not, 2016 Olympic champion, is tied for the U.S. #1 all-time in the shot put, and is a four-time U.S. champion, and currently holds the world lead at 22.91, which was, what, 3 weeks ago, Ryan?
Yeah, 3 weeks ago. So pretty recent.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, that might be a great place to start. Did you think you were in PR shape going into that meet?
I knew I was in good shape. It was kind of uncharted territory a little bit. It's just been tough with quarantine to. So I guess to run it back. So like I threw really well. Uh, Obviously in Doha, threw a big PR in the final round to get second, 22.90, and then took my normal amount of time off through indoors. But it was a pretty short season. We finished in early October, and I started up again with the move to Arkansas in the second week in November. So it took a block of time off, and had a pretty short training block going into indoors, but kind of really came together at US Champs through I think it was 22.60, just pretty close, actually really close to the world indoor record, and I felt like things were going really well, and that I was just ready for world indoors. Those ended up getting canceled, and I mean, as all the athletes know and coaches know, like within a week, it went from almost business as usual to just everything shut down. And so at that point, it's been lifting in the garage and throwing on a sheet of plywood behind the elementary school for me. And that's the facilities that I've had. And so it was kind of time to reevaluate and say, okay, that won't, what can I do that I can still build a foundation for next year? Because that's really what matters is 2021. And so went back into kind of a lot of heavy lifting. I just have a squat rack and a bench. So I can do some pulls. Most of them are from a hang, right? And then bench and squat. And so kind of trained almost like a power lifter a little bit. A lot of higher reps though than what I would usually do in March or April, like 8s, 6s, 5s. And it was just kind of, I'm just going to do that indefinitely. And then I had 10 days of notice before the Atlanta meet. So it was like I came off, I was doing 5 sets of 5-second eccentrics. So kind of like about the worst thing you could do to try to be throwing far. Good for building strength and stuff, but yeah, 5 sets of 5-second eccentrics. And so it was, and I had 10 days. So it was like, okay, well, it happened that it was coming up on a recovery week. So I was week 3 of the eccentrics. And so it was like, okay, we'll just take a recovery week, drive to Atlanta. And I'd only been throwing 3 times a week just because I didn't know when I would have a meet. I just want to stay in touch with it. And I've been doing pretty decent volume in my throwing sessions, just kind of working on technique a little bit, mostly just trying not to lose feeling for it. And so we ended up driving out to Atlanta. It was me, my girlfriend Megan Clark, she's a pole vaulter, and Eric Solons, hammer thrower that I've been training with. So the 3 of us all got in my truck and drove the 10 hours to Atlanta, and got there. And I felt a little bit stiff in the first meet, and really it was a big shock. I mean, I knew I'd be nervous, but I didn't expect to be that nervous. Uh, it was just a totally different atmosphere. I didn't expect kind of the being in quarantine and being completely separated from people for 5 months. Then it was like, okay, I'm in a meet. This is so much more stimulus than I've had in such a long time. So there was a ton of adrenaline. I actually had a pretty good warm up. I threw a warm up at about 22.50. And that really surprised me. My goal was to throw 22 in that first meet, and threw 21.86. And so I was pretty happy with that. Obviously, want to throw 22, and then that week just took almost only lifted a couple times real light and just threw a lot. And my rhythm and timing kind of came back as I started to rest a little bit more. My body bounced back from those five, the eccentrics, and it really just kind of found my rhythm and timing, which I'd been missing in heavy training. So I went in, wanted to throw the majority of my throws over 22 in the second meet, and I was on track with that, opening at 22:15, and then rolled right through the comp, and then I really connected well on the fifth round throw at 22:73, and that one surprised me a little bit. And then the last throw was just like, okay, try to replicate that, be a little bit more loose and relaxed, and just really connected well on that ball for 22:91. And so it was a surprise. I knew I could throw that far. I wasn't really expecting to, just because I hadn't been throwing hard in practice very much.
Yeah, that's
For the younger, if there's some younger athletes out there listening, 22:56 is right over 74 feet, and 22:91 is about 75.1, 75.2, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So feet and inches.
Yeah.
it's a ball.
Good.
In other words, it's a ball.
Yeah.
So, Bill Richards sent us in a question ahead of time, and he's like, from your first comp to a week later, you throw 22:91. He says you look significantly different, within just the scope of a week. What did you work on in that short window of time, that ends up producing a lifetime best? Was there anything technically, or just trying to get rhythm back, or?
Yeah, that was the biggest thing. I feel like is I just really got my rhythm back, and it kind of goes to show that just how much rest can do. And so coming off of, obviously, I didn't go from March until July without recovery weeks. I was doing 3 weeks on and then a recovery week. So my load was pretty well managed, but it turned out that I was 3 weeks on and a recovery week then going into the meet. And so the first meet. And so I just felt pretty slow and lethargic going into the first meet. Obviously I had a lot of adrenaline, but hadn't done any speed work or anything. And so I feel like that overall kind of the macro load of the eccentrics, I was strong, but I wasn't fast and firing well. The CNS was still pretty taxed. And so, and really that 1 week in between, I feel like is what made all the difference. I threw 4 times, so threw more. And really the biggest thing, because for me, I'm a big technical guy. I spend a ton of time just watching film, a lot of technical cues. And so we had worked a lot on technique over the quarantine. And so I felt like my technique was pretty good, but I got in the meet and some of the problems that I've been working on and some new stuff showed up. So it was kind of like, I felt like the first meet didn't really do where I was at justice, just because it'd been so long to have a meet to kind of test how is my technique holding up. And so those 4 practices in between really gave me an opportunity to fix what was wrong in the first meet. And that was, and after watching it back, it was so methodical in the first meet. Like you could tell I was trying to execute on some certain things, but it was making me so slow and methodical of not getting off my left foot. And that kind of, for me, if I don't get off my left foot, that kind of sucks me to the left side. And you see me miss off the left side of the toe board with my left foot when it plants. And so it was really just, okay, stop thinking so much, just work on rhythm, get off the left. And that's really all I did for 4 days. And was throwing there with Nick Ponzio. And I've been training with Eric Solons he's a hammer thrower. So it's not like I've been by myself, but I've been throwing by myself for a long time now. And so it was nice having Ponzio there to someone to throw with, and just brought the overall intensity. And I mean, for those people that know Nick Ponzio, he's a character. So he brings a good energy to the ring. So it was fun having a week there training with him.
He's doing really well too, Nick. Nick's really
he's
done well.
He's definitely been one of the guys who's kind of made the most of quarantine, I think, and laid a big foundation, which you can see right now. He's been able to throw 1 or 2 meets every weekend for the past 4 or 5 weeks, and he's throwing well consistently. So it's been good to see that, because talking to him, I know he's worked really hard during this block of no opportunities to compete.
That's awesome.
I heard you talk before of your technique being thought of as a V type of thing. Do you still think that way?
Yeah, you're talking about like my center of gravity?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the way I approach a shot is a little bit different. So if you're looking at, I don't know if this will mirror it, but so like a traditional, think of a discus orbit or in the rotational shot, like your center of gravity does kind of the classic corkscrew. So you wind up, you go down, you come up off your left, back down into the middle and out. So just like a classic, if you follow a discus orbit or the shot, that's your classic rhythm, kind of up, down, up and out. And so for me being 6'7", it's been a challenge. I used to throw like that. I mean, I threw far like that. And then I changed it in 2016 was the big year that I changed my technique. So instead of coming up and then back down, because that up makes my first step too big. And so I would kind of adapted it to a really level shift across. So as I'm coming out of the back, trying to stay level and then work down to the middle and then work up to the finish. So it's pretty much a level V down and out. And so I've still stuck with that, and it's interesting. So that pretty much, if you're a glider, that is a glide. You're level and it drops down into the middle and then out. So it's fall. And I grew up throwing with the glide. So my technique still pretty much mimics that. The problem with a V style spin of the level out of the back, working down into the middle and working out is that if you stay on the left foot too long, you're level. And then if you're on the left too long, you get late. And so your down doesn't go down to the center, you go down to the left side of the ring. And that's if people that have watched me throw since I've had that problem since 2017 of if I get on my left foot too long, you'll see my left foot miss the left side of the toe board. And that's for me kind of, and I mean, there's a lot of other things that cause that, but in general, it's that I'm staying on that left foot too long. But yeah, that's a pretty good point of how I think of the spin is a little bit different. But I will say it definitely doesn't work for everyone. It's something that I've adapted, and I never had anybody teach me that. It was just something I kind of worked on when I've had a lot of trouble fouling with the classic up, down, out technique because my first step gets too big.
So as you come out of the back, you talk about getting off your left foot. Is it that are you trying to settle in a little bit, or you just have a point that you say I got to go now?
Yeah. So for me, it's been a couple different cues. So the one, and it's funny because it's like you have one solution to something, and then the end result ends up being not what you want. So for the thing I was struggling with is really this fall is trying to get down. I knew I was staying on my left too long. And so as I'm winding and kind of entering here, to get my right foot down and think of working down, I was turning over and tilting my shoulders to get my right foot down. And so it's been kind of the feeling of work, keeping the shoulders level here and stepping down and kind of applying force off that left side, but without applying so much lateral force, almost letting myself come around. And then so I'm pushing. Think if you're spinning a bike tire, if you just push straight on the tire, it would go straight across. But if you push on the side of it, the tire itself actually spins rotationally. And so that's kind of a little bit of how I think of working down into the middle, as opposed to just driving straight across. I'm kind of applying force on a slightly outside of the radius of if I was the tire, pushing to turning it around as opposed to just pushing and setting through.
Very cool. So we had a couple of questions about specific parts of your technique. Could you run us through like how you think about the entire throw, like start to finish? That might be a little loaded, but
yeah, it's so I guess, and I mean so I'll just preface it with my technique is always changing. So many people think that elite level throwers like have their technique and it's just set. It's always changing. A, because I'm always trying to throw farther, but also B, because there's always something new that's going wrong. Like you'll have, at any level, you'll have a great practice and then you come out the next day and your left arm might be way ahead. And it's always something like, where did this new problem come from? So I'm always trying to solve new problems that are popping up, but also trying to improve and try new things. And so for me recently, it's been a big focus on rhythm and timing. Because, like I said, I've spent so much time just ingraining how I want to be technically. And I might hit those positions on film if you just take a screenshot, but the movement between is kind of where it's been lacking a little bit. And so right now, I'm kind of introducing a little bit more rhythm into my wind. That's the biggest thing I would say. If you watch meet one to meet two there in Atlanta, the first one was a really static, or I don't want to say static, but really methodical level wind. I was just across and then back. And so now this one I'm winding up and then slightly down and then just keeping that level to get on out. And so I've introduced a little bit of rhythm into my wind. And for me, it's just a long shift out over the left. That's a key for any rotational thrower, shot or disc, is you need to push laterally enough to get your center of gravity actually out over your left foot. You see a ton of kids, they think it's just rotational, and but you actually have to get yourself out, your center of gravity out to your left foot. So there's an active lateral movement aspect to it. So that's my focus. Wind up, lateral shift out, almost thinking of moving straight across till I face square, come around and face square to the center. Art Venegas has described it as like a inverse 7 move, which I think is pretty accurate. The way I line up and throw, it's not quite an inverse 7. It's more of almost like an upside down L. But that center of gravity moves out. I get out wide, square up, try to find a point that I can hold a focal point, and at that point, kind of stepping down into the middle, getting off my left foot, but without just pushing myself straight across, kind of getting off my left foot and accelerating rotationally that point, and still holding that left arm and focal point to put yourself in as much wrap as possible. And then for me, just trying to bring my right knee and left knee close together. And for me, the other thing is putting my left foot close to the center of the toe board so I have something to brace against. And I think the number one thing for me is just that dynamic right foot, active right side is really day in and day out probably the main reason that I continually am able to throw far as the active right side.
Ryan, for a younger high school kid, would you say using a focal point would be a main priority?
Yeah, I think so. Shoot, at any level, I think the focal point is huge, because wherever your eyes go, really your head will go. Wherever your head goes, the body will follow. So the focal point fixes a lot of problems, really. If you're coming in top heavy, like you're coming in and tilting forward, odds are your eyes are coming down. So that keep your eyes up and level keeps you with holding wrap, and then it keeps you from really getting too far back. But usually the problem is too far forward, coming into the middle. And the other thing too, that focal point will help. The longer you face into the middle, the longer you'll face at the finish. Kind of whatever my philosophy is, whatever you do out of the back will be reflected at the finish. If I come in and I'm way ahead with this left side, I'll probably be way ahead with the left at the finish. Or if I come tilted in with my head, say in front of my toes, I'll probably be blowing out the front of the finish. And so there's definitely reflection. And so if I can face eyes up and level into the middle, that'll put me in a lot better position when I come to finish. I can stay here with my head in the throw instead of pulling off right here. So I definitely think the eyes and focal point are a huge thing in both shot and discus.
So when you set up in the back, when you get to a certain point, do you know this is good chance it's going to be a good throw?
Yeah, I do. I definitely have a feel. And the other thing that I work on that I think a lot of kids don't even think of is I just work on my wind. So I'll spend, and it's not a ton, but it might be 10 or 20 times of practice, or at the end, and especially before, I'll just get in and just wind to here and just get comfortable with that. That starts your whole throw, is the wind. And so as the season goes, I just get more and more locked in. So it'll be as simple as I walk up, set my feet at the same spot every single time, go here. And I mean, because if you watch film, it's always pretty consistent.
Yeah.
I make small changes if I'm working on one thing or another, but it's pretty consistent. Set my feet, wind here, shots on the neck, wind back and go. But I just work on ingraining that over and over again. Put the shot in the same place. Try to make everything as repeatable as possible, and that's a big key to success, especially at the higher level and bigger meets, because you're going to have a lot of factors that come in that you're not expecting. So whether it's rain delays, event delays, just your shot didn't weigh in, whatever it might be. So the things that you can keep consistent that are under your control are always something you kind of fall back on if you're stressed out or something's not going your way. Those consistent keys that you can control every single time, like where you're starting, the wind, where the shot sits on your neck, are really keys to finding your comfort zone and having confidence in yourself when you get into those big meets.
I'll hand this back over to Brandon, but some guy on here, guy named Mac Wilkins, he has a question about do you work the stand and throw? How much do you work the stand and throw, and do you find value for it for the spinner?
Yeah, so as Mac knows, I work the stand and throw a lot, and I don't work it as much as I used to, but as a rotational thrower, I think without a doubt I probably work on the stand throw more than anybody else. Rotationally, there might be like Storl, probably I would say I work on about as much as any of the gliders. With Storl coming to mind, he's always had a big stand, and for me, it's been, I came from the glide and switched over late, and so if I can get in and throw a big stand throw, I feel really confident that I can throw far. And there's two schools of thought on it. One is if you want to throw far, a big stand throw helps, and I think it definitely does. But if you don't have to have it, Tom Walsh kind of goes to prove that. I mean, I've seen him throw 22 meters on days. He actually had a stand throw comp against Stipe Zunic, and I think Stipe was in tennis shoes without his wrist taped, and Stipe beat Tom, and Stipe threw 16 meters. I think Tom was like 15 mid, and then but Tom went on later to throw 22-10 or 22-20 that evening. So it was like pretty eye-opening that you can throw far without a huge stand, but for me, I just know that it helps, and I don't do it quite as much as I used to. Last year was definitely my best year of stand throws. I would say I threw 1950 stand throw with the 18-pound shot. That was probably my best. I stood right at about 70 feet before Doha, warming up outside the stadium, and so those were a great indicator. But then at the end of the day, I felt like I didn't transfer that power that well the day of in Doha. I mean, obviously you have a close to 70-foot stand. Throwing 75 with a spin is not a great conversion. And so the amount of time it takes too and dedication to throwing a giant stand is a lot. So, but for me, like if I can hang out at 20 meters with my stand day in and day out, I'm happy with that. And I feel like if I can stand 20 meters without working on it every single day, just get in the ring, and on a day that I feel good, throw a 20-meter stand, I feel like that's enough for me to, at this point, to break the world record. And so that's about all the power that I need, because at the end of the day, it's still, you're throwing from a full. When you're competing, you're not throwing from a stand. So a big stand definitely helps, but it's not what you're getting graded on. What you're getting graded on is the full throw.
Yeah. So you mentioned like working stands, working kind of drilling the back, your entry a little bit. What role did drills in general have in your training, and do you have a couple that you feel like are particularly good for your throw?
Yeah, so drills are really good, and I mean, what kind of the more that you can do, the better, I think, especially for kids that are up and coming, just the more you can expose yourself to, um, just ask yourself, okay, does this make sense and does it relate to my throw? And if the answer is yes, to both of those, it's probably a pretty good drill. So I mean, I grew up and all through college did shoot, and a lot of mine kind of varies in the actual throw as well. So like I'll do fixed feet, fixed feet, static start, stands. Those are ones I always keep in. I like those. So feet are set. Just get into your wind, hold that position for a sec, and then come out of it, really feeling that right side work. I'd throw most 95% of my stands are non-reverses. Um, and then moving back into, I'm a big fan of pivots or wheels, whatever people call them, starting with if you're right-handed, left foot is grounded out the back, your right foot is just hitting the middle, holding that position and then turning through. That's a really great drill. That's one I still keep in. Uh, do those twice a week. And then South Africans can be a useful tool. They help you work on the front half of your throw, but the biggest thing I'll issue is a word of warning that I've seen a ton of kids, because you can throw far on a South African, but you're starting to throw in double support facing the direction you're going to go. So I've seen a lot of kids throw really far off South Africans, and they just like to stick with those because they can throw far consistently, but you can't do it in a meet. If you ingrain really pushing off your right coming in, that's an added force that you don't have in the full throw. You can generate force with your right leg coming into the middle, but you can't push like you do in a south. So the south can cause some bad habits and almost be used as a crutch. So I'd warn kids, you can do souths, but at least like the vast majority of your full rotational style throws should be done from a full. Use the South African as a tool and really to work on the front half of your throw, but don't do it for distance. Because I mean, shoot, I've been there. In high school, I threw some of my farthest throws ever off of a south. But then when I got into the full, my fulls were uncomfortable because I got used to being completely linear coming in. And if you're a rotational thrower winding out of the back, no matter how good or disciplined you are on your wind, you're never going to make it perfectly linear coming in. You're still going to have a rotational aspect. So just embrace that instead of trying to emulate what you do. Because if you throw far with a south, you're going to try to turn your full throw into a South African instead of trying to turn your South African to replicate what you do in your full throw.
Very cool. We'll maybe do one or two more technique questions, and then we're starting to get a bunch of training questions. So,
All right.
one we had asked, do you have like any tips for young throwers? Or one of the questions by Garrett is, do you have any advice for high school throwers?
Yeah, so I would say right now, it's definitely a little bit, I mean, difficult times right now, but you have to just take it and try to turn it into an opportunity right now. So it's a good time, right, to just go out and throw a lot. Don't worry so much about the weight room. It's summer right now. The weather's pretty good. It might be hot, but you can be outside. So get out there and just throw a lot. And that's what I recommend to any high school thrower or developing thrower is just get out there and throw consistently. I guarantee you, if you go out and throw 5 or 6 days a week for 2 weeks, you'll tell a difference just in the feeling that you'll develop. And still try to work on, and the biggest thing is work on technique. Don't worry about just getting big and strong. It's a lot easier to develop strength than it is to develop technique. You put anyone in the weight room on a good lifting program and they'll get stronger, but the technique takes a lot more discipline, takes a lot more focus, and it's easier to do before you get strong. If you are throwing well or throwing far, when you're weaker, you're throwing with better technique is the best way to put it. If you have a kid that, so like for me, when I was in my freshman year of high school, I was about 6'1" or 6'2", 175 pounds, and I threw 60 feet with a 12-pound. And so I was not strong at all. I think my bench was 225 pounds. So, but I had good technique and I'd worked on technique. And so that's the the biggest thing I would say right now is a lot of the gyms are closed. It's tough to find a place to lift. But shoot, I'm throwing right now and have been at an elementary school off a sheet of plywood. So you can definitely find a place to throw right now, and that'd be my biggest thing that I would recommend. Is it's difficult times, but it is what you make it. So you can find a field to go throw in and just go throw some stuff around, and just have fun with it. It's going to be a while, I think, before we have meets across the country again. Hopefully this next spring. So it's a great time to just work on your technique, get strong this winter if you want to, but just get a lot of throws in right now and build a foundation and a feeling for the throw that you won't have an opportunity like this probably again.
And a
Some
lot
of those kids at that elementary school must get a kick out of you throwing at their school.
Yeah, there's a few of them that stop by every once in a while, but shoot, most of the kids are out for summer, so
Yeah.
it's pretty quiet out there.
So
ahead, Brandon,
you're kind of out there throwing, in an elementary school. A lot of kids and even elites around the country might not have the same access to a coach, during COVID. Just generally, not even necessarily right now during COVID. How important do you think it is, as an athlete to be able to analyze your own throws and kind of make some of those, like technical, views and advancements on your own, identify those?
Yeah, so that's a huge part, and I see at all levels, all the way from youth up to elite, that there'll be kids who, like, their very first thing they do, they throw, and, like, I swear they're releasing the ball and they're like looking at their coach for a cue. But at the end of the day, like, it's your throw, and coaches are an amazing tool, and they have put in so much time and a ton of dedication. But at the end of the day, it's just you in the ring, the preparation that you've done to get yourself in there, along with your coach, but they're not in the ring with you at the time. So you need to figure out what works for you and what throw is the best for you. Your coach has great input on that, but actually take a moment to feel what you're doing and think about your throw on your own. And so if you're throwing by yourself, it's a great time. Set up a camera, film yourself, and watch what you're doing. But just actually think about it. At the end of every single throw, think of one thing that you did well and one thing that you want to change, just based on the feeling of it. And that's really the best way to develop the throw. Because I've worked with a lot of kids, and some of them they'll take a throw, and I'll say, and they look at me, and then I just ask them, what you feel there? And sometimes they don't even have an answer. It's like, well, what did I do? And I was like, well, what did you feel? And so they're throwing, and it's not for a lack of effort. They're just not focused on the right things. They're not thinking, okay, what am I feeling and what am I doing? They're just throwing without reflecting back on it at all. So that'd be a huge thing I'd recommend to a kid throwing by themselves. On every single throw, focus on, okay, what do I need? What did I do well on that throw? And what's one thing that I can improve on, just based on feeling? And then go back and watch film when you're done. I'm not a huge fan of film at practice. It's tough to scrub through, watch film, and really have productive conversation while you're trying to in between throws. So it's mostly throwing for feel in practice. Go back, take notes, video analysis afterwards. That's the way that I do it. And what I find works best for me is watching film outside of practice and making notes of what I want to work on going forward. But during practice, I'm just working on my throw, what I'm feeling. And I work with Mario Satania right now. I work remotely with John DeGata as well as my dad. He still has input. I send him videos a couple times a week. So it's, I get input from a lot of places, but at the end of the day, it's still on me to kind of decide where do we want to go with this, what I'm working on technically. And the biggest thing is what I'm feeling. It's we get to the point, and especially with my dad, it's like he'll be watching and he'll say, oh, here's what I see. But for me, the feeling is so different. And as a coach, he's at such a disadvantage trying to work with me and correct things, because I can feel the moment that they went wrong. my left foot might end up over in the bucket. That's like the classic one we argue with. He's like, your left foot is in the bucket. But I'll say, well, I got off my left foot a little bit late and my left arm was a little bit lacking in discipline. It didn't hold straight here. It got around to here. And so that put my left foot in the bucket. But I can feel that. He doesn't have that input. He just can see that at the finish, my left foot was in the bucket. I threw left a sector. But so the athlete has a huge advantage, and they can feel what they're doing if they know what they're trying to feel.
Very cool. And to shift, we're getting a lot of questions about, training and what your training looks like. Brian King's asking, with the Olympics happening now in 2021, at what point in the next coming months will you consider yourself to be officially in training for the Olympics?
So, I mean, that's a little bit of a tough question to answer at this point, simply just because I still have a lot of unknowns with the end of my season. So right now, I did the couple meets in Atlanta and felt like they went really well. I've gone back I felt like that was a great indicator. And so now I'm trying to kind of prepare myself for a real, what I would say, an actual season. I went from off-season training, had a week and a half, did 2 meets, and now I'm doing a 1 month of kind of a preseason prep. So we're starting some plyos, we're starting some med ball, a little bit of sprinting, just more of dynamic athletic type training, which I've been really lacking, not knowing when I'll have meets. So I'm setting myself up for hopefully a few meets here, late August, early September. Fingers crossed that they happen, but yeah. So it's tough to say when I'll be specifically prepping for the Olympics, because I'll finish this season, and then probably take 2 weeks off, and then I guess I would say once the season over, I'll take 2 weeks off, and then it'll be training specifically for the Olympics. But I'll also say that the stuff I'm doing right now is definitely helping me set myself up for the Olympics. It's not like you just flip a switch and it's like now I'm training for the Olympics and things are rolling. It's an accumulation of all the work that you put in. So it's been years and years, and this whole quarantine block really has been training for the Olympics, in the sense that I've been just trying to build a bigger strength foundation, a bigger work capacity, doing high volume, eccentric, higher rep schemes. And so I would say there's no one point that you just flip the switch and you start training for something in particular. Really, the Olympics will be an accumulation of years and years of work for me.
Hey, Ryan, can I skip back to that eccentric training a little bit?
Yeah.
What kind of loads are you using?
Yeah,
for that type of training?
Yeah, so the basic for me doing eccentrics, I mean, I'm not, I write my own strength training, so I have some experience. I'm definitely not like the world leader in strength coaching, but I've gotten good at knowing what works for me. So basic rule of thumb is I'd be working, so I start with 3-second eccentrics and then work up to 5. I like that range. Any less, and I feel like it's just a slightly controlled descent, not a whole lot. And so I'm using it as really a method to get a high volume in and a high work capacity in. So it's not great in season. It's a great off-season training tool, but you have to really be smart when you're doing it, because it will break you down and it will beat you up. So for me, I do 2 to 3 weeks on, no more than that. And then a very generous recovery week with, there will be no eccentrics in that recovery week, probably just 2 or 3 lifts, stimulate the muscles, but actually take a true recovery week, not just a deload. And and I haven't really felt like I've been able to handle eccentrics very well until I'd say the last 2 or 3 years. I tried them some when I was younger, and you have to have a certain level of strength base to really benefit from eccentrics. And a lot of that is the smaller muscle and the stability. So you just give the average high school kid whatever amount of weight, they're going to be kind of just shaky and all over the place, where you need to have the posterior chain that's developed that you can engage the chest, engage your scaps, lats, and actually control that weight for a full 5 seconds. If you're shaky and don't feel super comfortable with weight in your hand, you're not quite ready yet for eccentric. So I would say for most high school kids, don't worry about that too much. Worry about learning the right way to lift, and then the biggest thing is just lifting with good technique. And as you develop strength, it's a great tool, but it's definitely not the difference maker. I would say that eccentrics are a good tool to load up and get volume in the off season, but it's not going to be the difference between a huge breakthrough and not being strong. If you put in the work and lift with good technique and continue to push yourself in a smart way, I'd say that no high school kid really needs to be doing eccentrics exclusively.
We got a couple of training questions that you might get answered. If you could would you give us a rundown of what this, you're in this new training cycle. Could you give us a rundown of an average week in the life of Ryan's training, and how many days a week you throw in? What's the volume look like? What's the lift and some of the sprinting stuff look like?
We know there's 2 days of bass fishing in there.
Yeah. Yeah, so I got to schedule my week around that. I actually have to go to a bass tournament here in about 15 minutes, but
and you better win, else don't come back.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can make some money tonight. So, but no, so right now I feel like is a really good time to kind of explain how my week is structured, because this is an indicator of this is my preseason phase right now, but my in-season phase is based pretty much exactly the same as this. There'll just be small changes to volume and stuff. And so right now I'm doing my Monday. I start off on Monday is a hard throwing session. That's the start of the week. Is a hard throwing session in the AM, and pretty limited on number of throws, not a ton of volume. I might work up to a dozen hard throws, kind of as a test and an indicator for where I'm starting the week off at. And then, so if it's good, if I have a good Monday practice, that's great. And that's kind of my indicator that we're green light, go for the rest of the week. If it's might be a little bit down or flat, that's kind of a yellow light that, okay, take into account that that you're starting this week with some volume. And so if I'm not feeling great at Monday's hard session, then kind of proceed with caution from there and take that into account. And so the PM will be a lower body and Olympic lift. And so right now I'm doing doubles on clean pulls, but I will usually stay between fours and singles. I don't usually go above fours on Olympic lifting. Right now I'm at doubles and kind of working my way down. We were at threes and now we're at twos. We'll be at ones next week. And then, so that's the Olympic lift. And then I'll do a squat. And for me, I like front squat. It correlates to my throw well. It feels more athletic to me than back squat. And it's just healthier, more comfortable for me to front squat than to back squat. So heavy front squat, we just dropped to doubles this week. So I have 8 doubles. That's a lot of sets for a developing kid. So I'd say if you're developing, maybe do 3s or 4s. You don't need to do 8 sets of 2. Just for me being 27, it takes more sets for me to get warmed up. It takes more sets for me to really get engaged and feel what I want to feel. So I'm working up to just feeling a heavy double that I feel like is engaging everything, and I feel strong at the end of it pretty much. But I'm not feeling tired. And then I'll finish that with plyometrics right after the squat. So right now it's some box jumps and some band weighted jumps. And then I'll finish that with some posterior work. So RDLs, good mornings, something to engage your posterior. That's undertrained a lot of kids. And then finish with abs. And so just weighted sit-ups, bar twists, just something to engage core. So that'd be my Monday. Tuesday. So today is my pressing day, heavy bench. And then after that, up some post dynamic. Hey.
I think you better get home there, Ryan.
Yeah. So, but yeah, to finish out the rest of the week. So Tuesday would be heavy bench, and then a pretty posterior focused training for the rest of my lift. And then in the afternoon after I lift is a med ball circuit, and it's kind of sad because right now I'm doing my med ball under a bridge. It's the only concrete wall that I've found. I'll probably put a post of it on Instagram tomorrow just because my girlfriend was there filming today. So I'm doing my med ball workouts into a concrete wall underneath a bridge. So that's the best I've found. And then Wednesday is AM Olympic lift and some light plyos just to stimulate and prep for Wednesday's throwing session. Wednesday will be a pretty technical, heavy throwing session. So really disciplined on just really working technique. I'll do a full progression from fixed feet, stand throws, pivots, static start fulls into fulls, kind of working on just setting myself up well technically. And that'll be a higher volume throwing day than Monday, but at a much lower intensity. And then, so Thursday's pretty much a reflection of what Monday was. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday kind of gets reflected in Thursday, Friday, Saturday, except for the load is down. So Thursday's legs again and light plyo, but it's just fast, working in that 60 to 70% range, speed doubles and triples. And then we'll go Friday is light upper body lift, speed dynamic once again, and then throw in the evening. And Saturday for me is the last day of the week. That'll be just throwing and some athletic training, some strides, something to just get myself feeling like a good athlete. Whether we just go out, like kick the soccer ball around, play some basketball, do something to feel like an athlete. And that's a technical session again in throwing. So real low intensity, quite a few throws, but just working on technique. And that's once again to set myself up to throw far on Monday, coming off a Sunday as a rest day.
So on your rest day, Brian, is it a complete rest day?
Yeah. So for me,
what do you?
Pretty much complete rest day. As I've gotten older, I find I need to do a little bit, but it's just, what's the best way to put it? It's just like rehab and prehab. So it's not like I'm training. It's stretch, foam roll, get on a trigger point ball, just kind of go through and feel what I need to work on. So if I need to do like a little bit of whatever it might be, grass or might do just massage, like elbow in my quad, anywhere, just laying on a lacrosse ball or tennis ball to release my glutes. So kind of just do a full body check. That takes about an hour for me to mostly make sure I'm healthy and everything's engaged and firing going into Monday.
Very cool.
Is Mitch's mic on? Mitch, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. So this is, if people don't know, this is Mitch Crouser, Ryan's older brother. Actually his dad. And Mitch, thanks for coming on, but you guys, father-son relationship, coach-athlete relationship, can you guys address that a little bit? How that dynamic has worked over the years?
Yeah, I mean, like for my role with Ryan, we just started getting into the track in grade school, and I was the coach for him back then, and then through high school. And my brothers and I threw a long time ago, and we did pretty good. I hit like 220 a few times at discus. My brother Bry threw 312 at the old javelin. Dean was 21 meters in the shot. And so, I mean, we did pretty good, but my biggest takeaway at the end of the career when we got out is that, God, if I would have known when I finished, if I'd known that in the beginning, how much better we could have been from just doing stupid stuff. I mean, our training was pretty much pedal to the metal every day. Throw as hard as you can every day, lift as hard as you can. And it worked pretty good, but it came with consequences, injuries, and some other stuff that really affected the overall career. And I think probably my biggest role for Ryan has been just kind of the guidance of all the stuff that I learned through myself with my brothers, of just avoiding injuries or trying to as much as you can, and just kind of being on a path that I just knew could reduce some of the risk and errors. So I think overall that's probably been my single biggest role in the whole thing.
And Ryan, what was it like having your dad for your coach? Or still have your dad for coach?
Yeah. It was great, and I mean, it still is great. It was definitely tough sometimes in high school because I know it would drive my mom crazy more than anything because it was just like track 24 hours a day. Because it'd be talking about track in the morning, after school track practice, in the evening lift out in our barn, and then at dinner it was track, and then sometimes going out we'd go on the after dinner and then throw into a net in the garage, but until I went to bed. So it was like track all the time, and it drove her crazy some of the time. But it was really good. It's been great. We've just got to spend so much time together, and taken me all over the world. And it's been really lucky that he's been able to travel to a lot of the USATF events, to World Championships, the Olympics, and so it's been a lot of fun just having him there, and for the whole family, just the opportunity that track and field has given us to really just be close and spend a lot of time together has been great.
But when's the last time you've been home?
Yeah, it's been a while. I saw that U.S. Indoors. They came down to Albuquerque at U.S. Indoors.
Yeah.
I was home for Christmas, but at this point it might be a little while before I get back. Still a little hesitant to fly, especially going to visit them. So my mom is driving down to Arkansas later on this week though, so she's gone a little stir crazy. So I think she's just hitting the road and driving her way down here.
Hey, Mitch and Ryan, maybe both you guys. Can we go back to 2016 for a couple minutes? And can you explain what you were going through that second semester? With all the credits you were taking, working on your masters, and just how rough that was, and then finally getting that behind you and being able to get ready for the Olympics.
Yeah, so
I think a lot of people don't realize what you were going through that second semester.
That whole last year. So for me, the people that don't know, 2015, 2016, I was at the University of Texas and getting my master's in finance, and doing essentially a 2-year degree in 12 months. And so it was extremely difficult. The way the program's structured is pretty much like a full-time job. So half the kids come straight out of college, but the other half have been working for 4, 5, 6 years coming back to school. So they're coming from a full-time, very engaging job into a master's program and it has that same intensity. So it's all graded on a bell curve. It's all competitive. And it feels a lot like a full-time job. You're in the classroom 5, 6, 7 hours a day. You've got about the equal amount a day of group projects outside of that. And so started that in June, and I finished it in May. And it was super challenging because they just told me the program we'll work with you and do our best, but this program is not meant for athletes. It's meant for people coming off of a full-time job that want to do this in a year and get back to work. And a lot of those people are working 80, 90-hour weeks. And so it was really difficult. I remember talking to my dad in the fall, and training was just going actually, and then again in the spring, it was going so horribly bad. I was lifting, and that was one thing I could kind of fit in because would have like 1 hour block, and worked with my strength coach at the time. And it was like, what can we do in an hour that can be counted as a workout? And how do we maximize 1 hour block? That's all about that I have. And so the strength training was going okay, nothing great, but I was just not really able to throw. I was throwing Saturday, Sunday, and then maybe like a Wednesday. And I remember telling my dad, I was like, I just don't know if this is worth it. The master's degree is a great opportunity. And that's setting me up for the rest of my career, and the rest of my life. But I don't even know if throwing kind of makes sense right now because I am not really able to do both. But he just said, just keep working as best you can, and just pretty much just don't quit right now, or you'll really, really regret it. So I just really focused on the weight room aspect, try to do the best I can. But like I was saying, it was lifting 3-4 days a week, throwing Saturdays and Sundays, and maybe once a week. And so it was really, really tough. And in that program, you're getting like 5 to 6 hours of sleep every night. So I'm constantly, and for me, if I get less than 8, I am not really recovering. So I was constantly relatively sleep deprived, not recovered, stressed outside of training, add just the physical training stress on top of it. So I was kind of just struggling the whole time. I remember I opened at Texas A&M indoors and threw under 18 meters on my first 2 throws. I threw like 1770 and 1780. And so it was so far off at that point, but I just kind of stuck with it. And so that last semester, it felt like I had put so much work in, but it just wasn't showing up at all. And then when I finally graduated, then there in the first week in May, I skipped my graduation to go to Prefontaine and compete in my first Diamond League, first professional meet, through 20 meters high, and was not unhappy with that at all. It just felt good to be out there competing, and made the final. So it was first Diamond League, you're competing against all the guys you've been looking up to. But I was excited to get back to work after that, and finally stuff started clicking. It felt like I made the entire year's worth of progress right there in that month of May and June. So it was because I was moved to the Olympic Training Center, was sleeping 10 hours a night, eating all my meals, doing all the stuff I've been wanting to do, just physical therapy, just all the little stuff that I've been wanting to do but hadn't been able to. I was able to there in those 4 to 6 weeks. And I felt like I made that whole year's worth of progress that I'd been looking for in that time that I finally let myself be a professional athlete for the first time.
Were you even thinking of the Olympics during the middle of that year?
Dude, I was thinking about just stopping throwing. I was like, I'm just going to stop throwing and just get my master's. Because I did well in class. I was right up near the top of my class, but also it's so competitive. Everything's rated on a bell curve that the throwing and lifting wasn't helping my classroom stuff at all either. So it was like, man, I'm doing okay in the classroom. I'm really sucking in throwing and lifting, but it's kind of just like nothing was going especially great at that point. It was just struggling to keep my head above the water. And so, but once I finished and I threw that at Prefontaine, and it was like, I feel like there's a ton more there. It was like that 20 meters high. And I had thrown far at indoors because I got right around that time, I had about a week off from school. And so and then we traveled up there, and I had been training okay. It hadn't been going poorly, but then I threw the 2173, and that was at Big 12s. And so we headed up there the week before, and it was like, I got a couple good nights of sleep, got to recover and just step away from the classroom for a little bit. And it was like, in 2173 that was a pretty big surprise. And it was like, okay, if I can do that with 2 days of rest, I can't imagine if I can get a couple weeks of actual training in. So it was just like, almost like you just keep putting hay in the barn, just keep putting as much work in as I can until I graduate. And it worked out really well. I had an unbelievably huge training base going into 2016, or into the Olympic season and the post-collegiate season.
And it's not like you had an easy undergrad major either. So let people know what your undergrad was. Your undergrad major was.
So I did 2 years of engineering, and then decided it wasn't for me. And then I figured out about the MSF program, the Master of Finance. So I rushed that. So I did the hardest part of engineering, had a ton of extra hours, rushed to get through an econ major, and then a business foundations in 2 years, and then went on to the MSF. So it definitely wasn't a cakewalk for me going through college.
We'll let you, I know, Mitch, your son has to go to a bass tournament to try to make a few bucks so you don't have to pay him allowance this week.
Gotta pay the man.
Mitch, when Ryan leaves, can you stay around for a little bit?
Sure.
Cool.
But Ryan, the last question, and real quick, do you kind of ever sit back and realize what you've done? You know, you're Olympic champ, you're Olympic record holder. You look back at all the great throwers before you, and Randy and Timmerman and all the early guys that you and my dad know, like George Woods and Al Furback, and none of those guys could accomplish what you've accomplished. You ever kind of just sit back and say, hey, this is pretty good?
For me, it's actually kind of a challenge to do that. I mean, I'm honored to be up there with all of those guys in the shot put and in track and field. Just to be on that list is an honor. But for me, it's a lot of times it's difficult to kind of sit back and look at that because I'm so goal oriented. I'm always looking at the next thing. I mean, I threw that 2291 in Atlanta, and it was like, okay, sweet, I got a PR now. But the next thing that crossed my mind is like, okay, we're driving back Sunday. We're driving back the next day, get back Monday, that'll be a rest day. Okay, Tuesday, what's our workout going to be? It's like always going forward. So it's been actually a little bit of a challenge for me to just sit back and actually kind of and look at what I've done and take pride in that. So it's something that I'm trying to do more of because I'm, like I said, so goal oriented. And if I get my goal, it's always looking to the next one instead of taking a moment to kind of enjoy it and look at how much work and how much time you put in to get that. And that's something I would say to younger throwers or any throwers, or shoot, you don't even have to be a thrower to do that. Just if you just take a moment to be happy and be proud of what you've done. I mean, there's so many athletes out there that are so dedicated, and a lot of the ones that are successful are the goal-oriented ones, because that's what makes you good, is you're wanting to be the best, you're wanting to push yourself. But take a second to be proud of yourself and look back at what you've done, and don't just look at being the best or being better in the future. Take a second to say, yeah, I'm proud of how much work I put in and all the sacrifices that I made to be here. And so that's kind of what I've been trying to do a little bit, especially with quarantine. It's just trying to stick to a schedule. I was talking with my partner, Eric Solons. We haven't missed a day since, this whole year. We haven't missed one day. So that's been pretty good. We've been really dedicated, and it hasn't been easy. So I was talking with him about that just the other day, that we've been, just to be proud of that, if nothing else. There's been a lot of adversity this spring and summer, and so it's been tough. But like I said, I'm honored to be at that top list of shot putters, or up near the top with some guys that I looked up to growing up, and watched a lot of film of all of those guys. And so it's
some black
definitely
and white.
An honor.
Some black and white film.
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
Listen, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you gotta go. Listen, what you have done for U.S. shot putting is gigantic, and how you carry yourself is truly, in such a class manner, is truly a reflection of your family, and we really appreciate everything you're doing, and we're sure that there's going to be some really big throws to come in the future, and maybe even a world record possibly.
Well, thank you, Rob, and yeah, I'll be doing my best to get that world record out here. Fingers crossed. Maybe we can get it by the end of the summer.
Yeah. Well, good. Go catch some big bass and win yourself some money.
All right, I'll do my best.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. We appreciate you joining us.
All right, Brandon, you have a good one.
See ya.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ryan. Hey, Mitch.
Yeah.
Hey. Hey, thanks for coming on.
You bet.
He seems to be doing really well. Do you think the move to Arkansas has really helped him quite a bit?
It's been good in that just the change. I mean, the training center, it was great. You know, the first year, Mac Wilkins was the throws coach.
Yeah, of course.
I was going back and forth down there quite a bit. I'd stay with Mac, and that worked well. And Joe Kovacs was down there for the stimulation every day of practice. You got the world champion and that upped everything. Yeah, but after 3 years, I think things was starting to just get a little bit stale. He needed like a change, and just with Arkansas, he loves like the outdoor stuff, all the fishing and everything like that. And Southern California is not really the place for that. And it just worked out really well with Mario being then down to Arkansas, and that opportunity came, and he loves it. He loves it down there. So I think the training center was good too, but it was just the change has just been, it's been a good positive.
That's very cool.
How are you guys doing? How are you and your family up in Oregon doing?
We're doing good. Everything here. We're outside Central Oregon. We're outside of Bend. We're about 15 miles from Bend. So, I mean, we're out of town. So for us, the virus hasn't changed it day to day. It's not a whole lot of difference. We're here, but it has changed a ton. Where in the past, I've been down a lot at the training center, was planning on being back and forth to Arkansas. Ryan usually comes home for some blocks of training up here for the virus. All that has not happened, but I think he's done a good job making the most of it and using this opportunity as a positive instead of a negative. It's been tough, not a normal place to lift. He's thrown off a plywood ring, he puts it in the back of his truck and hauls around to wherever he goes up and throws, and just with all the rest of that. But at the same time, it's given him an opportunity to try some new things, some bigger blocks of training that normally with Diamond League firing up in April, and basically there's a big meet every couple of weeks all the way to September, or last year was October with Doha. So you never can get in those big blocks of training. It's just you have to throw pretty far every week. And so this has given some positive opportunities. I think that we might be seeing some of the payoff coming from that. So I think he's done a good job making a positive out of it. And so, yeah, we'll see what happens here.
The Diamond
League.
League.
Going back to Doha. Oh, I'm sorry, Brandon, go ahead.
I was just saying the Diamond League, and the stress of going over to Europe every summer, I've been wondering about that, because you've seen like Crouser, Ryan threw big a couple weeks ago. Valerie Allman just threw 70-15. You got some pole vaulters setting, U.S. top 3 marks. You've got some, American records in the 5K going down. It's interesting that some of the people that have been able to train, like, they're getting that good training without the stress of travel. And, I feel like we're seeing a little bit of that, with some of these records going down the last couple of weeks, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and I think that there might be some more coming just because of that, when at the higher level athletes, you're having to travel, go to these meets for your living. That's how you're getting paid. Yeah. But it also really takes a toll on performance. We're traveling to Europe, traveling to Doha, all over the world. And you're not sleeping, eating, your lifting and training is not optimum. It's more of a survival mode is what it is. So you got the block to be as good as you can be by about April, and then it's kind of ride it for as long as you can. And this has given, I think, some of the athletes an opportunity to do some stuff that normally you don't get to.
Yeah. Me and you had this conversation before, going back to 2016. Ryan breaks the Olympic record, wins the gold, and then gets to go over to Europe and have some Diamond League meets and some other big meets. But he was still young. He didn't travel at all that much early in his life, right? I mean,
no, not at all.
It takes
kind of a rude awakening to what this pro circuit was. I remember he went after he won the Olympics, he had opportunities in Europe for meet promoters and stuff. And I think he went from Rio to Chicago, and his very first flight missed a connection, was just on the floor in Chicago. And he goes, I'm supposed to be from Paris tomorrow. It's a little tougher than what you think. So yeah, it was just, you had to adapt pretty quick that, he had nothing to really prepare him for that, of all the international travel.
Yeah. So, by the way, let's talk about you. What was it like growing up as a Crouser, the first family of throwing?
It was great. I mean, like my brothers and I have a good relationship. We're each just 2 years apart, and Dean and Brian are brothers, and very competitive in everything, but in a pretty positive way. I think that it benefited all of us, and I think just working out together, throwing together, it just pushed all of us to higher levels than what you would have done by yourself.
Well, a lot of people think you went to University of Oregon, which you didn't, obviously.
No, I was in high school. I was a javelin thrower. I did not throw just. I was a pretty good javelin thrower, and blew my elbow out my senior year. Lost all the college scholarships, so I just walked on at a local community college, and then tried to pick up the shot and discus there and started getting a little bit better. And Idaho was the only school that gave me a scholarship. So I went there and then just continued to improve and won a couple Big Sky titles, and then got to deal with Nike. And then I moved to Eugene. So then I was down with my brothers after that. I was living in Eugene, but I was already done with college when we were all done at Eugene. I was already done with college.
What did you tell me you threw your first meet, your first junior college meet in the discus?
Nothing too impressive. My first meet,
something like 137 or something like that.
20 feet. So it was kind of my first meet through 220, and my last meet I threw 220.
So you improved 100 feet. What do you see in the future for your son, and if once this thing all clears through and this COVID stuff, you think your son's going to keep going for quite a while? He seems to be at the peak of his career right now.
Yeah, I mean, physically he is. I'm excited just to see what still comes about this season with the blocks of training that he has under his belt. And then, I mean, a lot of it comes down for these throwers at this level. It's just financially, where a lot of the other countries are paid by their national federation stuff. We don't have anything like that. So you're making it on your prize money at Neats, the Diamond League, hopefully shoe contracts. And so a lot of it is just kind of the financial reality. And that's like for my brothers and I, in the end, what kind of in it for us was just like, you kind of have, real life hits at some point after college that you've got, car payments, rent, food bills, utilities, all the rest. You got to pay that. And so, but I'm hoping that he can go for a long time, because I still think there's a lot more upside to come if he gets that opportunity.
Yeah, that's cool.
So when he'll take films of his throwing, and you guys go through workouts and kind of go back and forth that way right now?
Yeah, it works great. Where Mario's down there at Arkansas, and I've known Mario since he was a coach at Texas, and so that works great. So like yesterday was a hard session, and so then Mario will send me the video. Then Ryan usually calls after the workout. Hey, going through the throws, what it feel like, how did it go, and we just talk after the work. So it's actually, that's the difference now with the technology. It's just so nice. With all the video and coach's eye, that the kids just all take it for granted. Like when you and I were competing along, have it, like that. It's such a nice tool as far as coaching and everything to be able to do stuff like this.
Were you doing when you're working with kids, the group you have up back home, when you're working with kids, when you're first teaching them, you're teaching a lot of drill work, or you're doing just letting them throw, or what's your when you first get these young kids out there?
A lot of drill, just the very basic positions. I think that it's way easier to learn good technique starting off with good basic positions, rather than maybe developing a lot of bad habits that later you try to fix. So that's kind of the first thing for me, is just really good basics. And then also always asking for feedback. What did it feel like? What did it feel like? And that was something that I really tried to ingrain with Ryan from a really young age, every throw to try to have that awareness of where your body was, what was it doing, not to be relying on me to what was good or what was bad, that you knew what was good or what was bad. I think that's a huge thing for the kids, being able to just have that self-awareness for movement.
And you encourage young athletes to be multi-event throwers too, don't you?
Yeah, and multi-event throwers and all sports. I mean, like for Ryan, all the way through his senior year, he was way more time in basketball. Basketball is his main deal as far as for time, and played all sports. And I think just the crossover in the big picture, long term, you're way ahead. It's easy to specialize at an early age and get good results, but I think you're capping the upside potential. I think just playing all sports and doing a variety of stuff, it just gives a lot more upside.
You want to tell the story about Ryan's state meet his senior year?
Oh yeah, that kind of for me as a coach and dad, just kind of a sad thing. We'd had such big goals his senior year that wanted to get Mike Carter's shot record. Mason Finley had the discus record, and then indoor, we were going really well. Indoors, he broke the national high school 16-pound, got the indoor high school 12-pound, and just thought we were in line to kind of had some really big things coming. And he always liked throwing the javelins. Cousin Sam was real good at javelin. And Ryan always liked doing it at a young age. He was very good at it. But as he got a little bit older, it just doesn't go so good with the shot and discus. And anyway, we were towards about the middle of his high school senior season, and he's throwing the javelin out there, and he tore his groin just the week before district. And I was just sick because we really felt we were on pace for some huge things, what was coming. And God, it was just heartbreaking. At district, he has a hard time walking. And in Oregon, you've got to get through the district meet, else you don't even get to go to state. And in the shot, he just had his feet facing forward and just kind of pushed it out there. And he was able to throw a little over 50 feet, and that made it. But he had thrown 77 indoor. He was hoping to be through. He was hoping. So 50 wasn't much. And discus did the same thing. His feet just faced forward, threw 150. And I started tearing up on the victory stand. Here you walk up to the top from the first to sixth place, and he couldn't step up on the deal, and he ended up crawling up to that. He won at district with those marks, but he had to crawl up to get the medal. Couldn't step up with that groin. And I was just sick. He had worked so hard, and then everybody of the other coaches that I knew, and we were, God, it's just such a shame and everything. You're not going to have the chance at state. But we had about 10 days to get ready, and the groin was torn bad. It was all black and blue and everything else, but we're doing everything we could on physical therapy and ice and all the rest. And thought, well, God, you might be able to still maybe do a standing throw, maybe. And so you didn't really know. We're just trying to, just do anything we could. And we get down, and first was discus, and he just started kind of easy, and then threw about 150, then 160, just all stands. And at the end, threw about 180, and won just stand and couldn't reverse and get that feet. And the same thing with shot, threw like 50 something, about 55, then 60. And at the end, he ended up throwing over 20 meters, I think about 66, and he ended up winning. Just standing
off the stand, right? Both off the stand.
Yeah, just off
the stand. Yeah.
But it was great that he did, but it was still just so hard to watch it because it was just a little inkling of kind of what could have been. And luckily, about a few weeks later, he could start to spin, and he did end up getting Mason Finley's record. He did get the national record in the discus. So that was good, kind of salvaged it a little bit, but it's still kind of like. It was tough for me as dad and coach watch, kind of what maybe could have been, Was Sam? Did Sam win the javelin that year?
Or was that
Sam's
was Sam?
1 year older. So Sam won
So that was the
Jeff
year before.
every
Okay.
year.
Yeah.
And but yeah, Sam was a year older than Ryan.
So Doha last year. Thoughts on that? Greatest single event ever in track and field history. That's my thought. Yeah, not just shot putting. I'm talking all events. If all the stats provided, it comes out to be the greatest single event in the history of the track and field.
Well, yeah, that's what he said. As a percentage of the world record, exactly, it was a single event in track and field history. And I mean, it was just an honor to get to be there and to be part of it. And preparation went great down there through Doha. I mean, he was ready to go. And it was the script from our end went about as perfect as it could have been, where we said, okay, hey, first throw, you got to put the pressure on the field. You got to break the world championship record. First throw. Which and that point on continue to build on it, and the whole thing was that we thought that, hey, 75 feet, pushing that 23-meter range, that's what we were shooting for. And first throw, he opens up, and he was the first thrower, and threw, I think it was like 22:36, broke Gunther's record, and it could have been perfect. Just never imagined that Tom's going to open up. Well, here's boom, 22.90, and then Joe comes on his last throw, 22.91. So I mean, from Ryan's, and it almost perfectly scripted to what we hoped was to break the record first throw, build on it, hope to be over 75 at the end, which he did. Just wasn't planning on the guy to do the same thing.
I tell you, and after seeing Tom's open and throw, for those guys to come back, including Ryan, obviously, that takes a little guts to come back the way they came back and keep building on the throws that they had. It was unbelievable to watch. I can't imagine what it was like being in the stadium and having your son as one of the participants.
It was, just a company you'll just never forget. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
So we had a couple of questions we didn't get to. I'm wondering if we have people asking questions on YouTube of, do you know what Ryan's farthest training throw is?
Yeah, but I'm not saying it. It's out there.
That's good.
Sometimes you get some of those practice when everything's clicking, and I'm hoping that over this next month he gets some opportunities that maybe he can get some more PR. I mean, it's a good start. I think that his preparation was really going well. Like indoors, came close to that indoor world record, and not even really unloading yet, planning on the world indoors in March when he threw 22.60, and then the same thing outside, that within 2 meets, you've thrown 22.91 and you PR'd that. I think potentially there's some good stuff that could be coming.
And another question I was gonna ask Ryan before he had to duck out is what long term do you guys feel is coach and athlete and father and son, or where are the big gains still to be had? Is it strength? Is it power? Is it still technical tweaks? Like, where is he really still making the biggest progress?
It's actually pretty much across the board. It has surprised me with his strength program, in that, like, when he was at Texas, he had Trey Zapata down there, who was just an excellent strength coach. And he had Trey writing everything up till, I think it's his junior year. Then he had Ryan become a part of writing it. Senior year, Ryan had started having a bigger role with the plan that he could continue on. Trey would review it. And Ryan is still constantly improvising his training program, but is still making gains across the board, which now, he's 27, and it surprised me that he is still across the board, pretty much all lifts, still going up, and technically still working on things, still getting better. And I look at it almost like as a rising tide, where nothing jumps out that it's, oh, you're way bigger, way stronger. Technically, it's way better, but just everything across the board is kind of imperceptibly just is still coming up. And I think a lot of it's just putting in the work, and it's still, everything is still improving.
That's awesome. Can't wait to watch a little more, hopefully a little bit this summer.
Yeah, I do too. I hope so.
Very cool. I appreciate you joining us.
Well,
It's fun.
Yeah. Hey, Mitch, I think we need to kind of wrap this up, but you know, I wanted to thank you and you know, on behalf of the throwing community, I tell you, your brothers, your family, nephews, nieces are all fantastic people and class acts. And obviously with your son, that comes through every time I talk to him or we talk to him. So it's just it's the first family of throwing, and it's just a joy to be around you guys.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So when we go off air here, don't hang up.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, before we
Brandon,
do,
I'll post those raffle winners.
awesome. So if you're still staying tuned and you stay tuned, we will have a few raffle prizes. We'll post on the National Throws Coaches Association Twitter handle. Thanks again to Rob and MF for some of those prizes and sponsoring, and thanks to the National Throws Coach Association for continuing to help us get the word out. Thanks to Ryan Crouser for joining us. Hopefully he's slaying some bass and catching some big ones right now. And thanks to his dad for joining us here. And we'll wrap it up there, and we'll be back here either next week or the week before with more awesome throws content. Follow National Throws Coach Association on Twitter, and that's where we will primarily kind of advertise and get the word out to you guys. And with that, have a good night, and we'll see you again soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Brandon.
Sweet.